Still here, are you? I've still got some pork and beans if you're hungry. You ain't here for food. You're here to see how our tale ends. It gets pretty dark before the end, just a warning. After running afoul of some griffins, they return to Bounty to give the ancient journal to Paladux. Mr. Galloway reads the packet of information and learns that the crux had been brought to this region hundreds of years ago when sealed away in a dungeon. In an effort to mislead Paladux, they cut the guide to the dungeon from the journal and hide it away as they go to visit him. During the meeting, Paladux asks where the missing pages are. Cedric feeds him a ridiculous cow patty, and Paladux calls him out on it. They produce the pages for Paladux, and Iros offers to take care of the recent skiff incursions to make up for the lies told. Paladux latches onto this idea and freely gives them supplies for their journey southeast. In order to prepare themselves for their mission, they meet with Yonad, a skiff-born man raised in town, about his heritage. He tells them the Assassin Nation are a caste society and hold great reverence for a tree and a religious site known as the Sink. The party ventures down into the wash and are ambushed by great lizards known as Malas. After several days' travel, the party wakes up to discover that the sun is missing. Confused, they wait several hours before realizing that something is very wrong. Iros contacts Ophelia and asks if the sun is missing where they are as well. Silas responds and tells him that he has won. You see, Silas and Paladux had been working together to locate the crux. Paladux and Silas knew that it was located in the silver mine inherited by Jared and took measures to get him out of the way. The black book stolen from the train contained the answers to the safeguards put in place that was in possession of Annette. When Silas had both the location and the means to obtain, he took hold of the crux and began playing with reality. Soon after this revelation, a band of skiffs surround the party and take them captive into their camp located in a dead forest. They are presented to an old shaman woman with 2 direwolves. They manage to communicate with her via drawings in the dirt and learn that the skiff aren't too pleased with Silas either. She leads them and the rest of the tribe through the dead forest and down into a pit. At the bottom is an old white tree that's almost dead. The waters that feed it are sludge, and the old shaman indicates that they should venture into the caverns to cleanse the spring. The finders agree and press on. Past an ambush of gricks and over some rocky ruins, they make their way through a collapsing wall and discover a carved facade in the cavern. In the darkness is a humanoid figure, and when the party call out, it vanishes. Nearby is the source of the spring water, black oily sludge pumping from a source underneath the surface. The party heads up to the fortress where a trap is sprung, and 2 rust monsters attack. During the fighting, some dark elves appear from side passages and attack as well. They use the fortress to their advantage, raining arrows down from above. Mr. Galloway climbs up to deal with them as Cedric tosses some dynamite. The explosion kills several of these drow and wounds the barbarian, but the elves keep coming. Iros and Roscoe examine the water some more and discover that an ochre jelly lives in the deep. They work on killing it and burning the remains as the drow send forth their champion. He drops Mr. Galloway like a sack of potatoes, and Cedric tries to drag his unconscious form away. Cedric is slain. Before the others can scatter, a cloaked man covered in wraps rushes in. He stuns the champion and heals the half-orc with a potion. And they escape back to the Sink, where the tree is already starting to show signs of rejuvenation. They have been saved by Jonas, a half-skiff monk, champion of his people. The shaman urges them to drink a blessing from the tree sap, and they do so, experiencing visions. They learn that Silas is a dark elf and had been left at the tree as a baby, where he was raised by the Assassin. His birth people had been devastated in a major cataclysm over 100 years ago, and he sought to shift the balance of power in their direction. The Fates informed him of the crux and helped him look for it. After achieving his goals, Silas betrayed Paladux and has taken up residence in Bounty. The party gives Cedric a funeral, and the shaman tasks Jonas to ride with them and redeem their people. The posse mounts up and rides back into town, avoiding patrols of drow roaming the surface. Iros rides into town but is quickly driven back, and the party sneak up to Paladux's mansion, hoping to ambush Silas. The drow gunslinger is in the middle of town and requests a showdown at high noon. The mansion catches fire from an unknown source and the group head into town. Roscoe and Jonas go invisible, and Mr. Galloway disguises himself as a drow. Iros attempts to distract Silas with banter while Mr. Galloway gets close and runs him through with a sword. Silas smiles and informs them that he also wished to not be able to be killed. A grueling fight ensues, with Silas levitating and raining down steel. The Drow champion returns, as do the revived corpses of Carter and Virtes. Ophelia is nowhere to be found. During this time, Jared Vestock himself arrives and helps the party. He had faked his death to cast in his lot with Silas in the hopes of bringing his friends into the fold and reaping untold riches from the crux. However, when he sees the trouble that his old friends are in, he betrays Silas and opens fire on him. Silas kills him for real this time, and when he sees his allies fallen, he mounts a nightmare and tries to escape off into the astral plane. Mr. Galloway climbs up onto a rooftop and launches himself at the Dark Elf, knocking him off the back of the flying horse and breaking his neck in the process. The fall killed him, a loophole in the wording of the wish. With his heart stopped, the Drow disperse and the sun begins to weakly shine through the darkness. Tree rides into town on the back of a buffalo looking for trouble just a little too late. They don't find the crux and determine that it must be with the Fates. They leave Steve the dog and a Karen home while they ride off for one last job. Returning back to the lair in the mountains, they fight past the flesh golem this time and discover a vast underground fortress. The three Fates are a coven of hags in service to the Drow goddess Lolth, and have been seeking the crux to bind her to them. With all the cards on the table, they assault the finders. Ophelia joins the fray, transformed into a Drider by the Fates. In the fighting, Tree falls, but so do the handmaidens of Lolth and Ophelia. With the worst behind them, they recover the crux and interact with the consciousness inside. It reveals that when it grants wishes, it gets closer to being freed from its prison. The party decides carefully what to do with their wishes and interacts with the other consciousness. Jonas wishes for peace and prosperity for his people, but not at the expense of others. His mind is full of plans and he knows that he will be a good leader for his people. Mr. Galloway wishes for knowledge of the world and her history. His mind swells and he becomes the most knowledgeable person in the planet. Roscoe simply wants to be shut of this place. Iros plies it with questions, and the ones it deigns to answer reveals that it has been free in the past and it will be free again. Iros wishes to be better trained in the arts of gunslinging in order to bring justice. His prowess and dexterity with a gun is now the stuff of legend. Back in the abandoned fortress, the party discusses what to do with the crux. Mr. Galloway simply wishes it destroyed. With a resounding crack, it shatters in his hands, mist dissipating outwards from him. Days later, the group finds themselves in a saloon, discussing what to do now that the dust is settled. Mr. Galloway heads back to the Empire, becoming a teacher in the capital's university. Roscoe travels the realm, continuing to collect stories and gaining popularity. Jonas returns to his people, leading them to a golden age of prosperity. Iros and the Man in Black ride together across Marathon, until the Tiefling begins to train a militia to better protect the wastelands. The sun sets on these legends, but their time in the Badlands of Marathon will be the topic of songs and the inspiration for budding adventurers for generations to come. This here's just one of them. Me, I gotta get going. These cattle ain't gonna drive themselves. You take care. And if you ever head out in the Badlands, be thankful we got folks like the Finders doing good.